Some of you have gotten contests off the ground, as we have, and I'm a little tired, but after an exciting day is well worth it. We got a whole bunch of soccer kids out, and our volleyball team traveled yesterday, and it's starting to feel right again. Hopefully we can get back to normal next fall, even if that means remaining masked. We can at least have what might be our normal season. So congratulations to all of you guys that have successfully gotten those athletics off the ground. Really looking forward to hearing some tips from Russ Waterman today. But before we do that, I want to give it over to Mick Hoffman to talk about a sponsor who will be talking to us today. Go ahead, Mick.
Thanks, Cole. And it's great to hear and to be able to start dealing with eligibility issues again. I never thought I would say that after last year, but it's actually a pleasure to be dealing with the regular work. With us today is two gentlemen from the NFHS, Mark Koski and Sean Hennessy, to give an update on what's available through the NFHS network, as well as Pixelot. I will say, just as a preface, that they've been great partners, and a lot of times when we're coming to the membership, having to deal with moving out of larger venues, adjust tournaments, potential membership increases, potential ticket increases, what we continually hear is, hey, get more sponsors, find other revenue streams. Well, the NFHS network is not only an outstanding service, but it's one of those potential revenue streams that could pay significant dividends in the next 3 years moving forward if utilized. And so Washington, under Mike's leadership and the board, got on board very early in this process and is in a very good position with that. And so we wanted to make sure that all of you had a chance to get the update on what's going on with the network, as well as find out what your opportunities and options are with that moving forward. So Mark and Sean, welcome to Washington virtually. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mick. Appreciate that. Thanks for the opportunity, obviously, Cole. Love the playlist. I'm going to take that idea for everything moving forward. My only thing was the next song was like my all-time favorite, so I wish we would have started like 3 or 4 minutes late, because then the Dave Matthews song would have been on there. But anyways, it's all good. Thanks for the opportunity. As Mick said, the WIAA and the NFHS network has been partners for a long time. The NFHS created the NFHS network 7.5 years ago, really with one goal in mind, and that is to cover all 2 million high school events that there are. Not only those great varsity games or those great Tuesday night volleyball games and Friday night football games, but also the freshman and JV games as well. And so we partnered with Pixelot, which is our automated solution, 3 years ago, where you need literally no humans whatsoever. As once we have your schedule, and Sean Hennessy, who's your state contact, will talk about this, but once we have your schedule, it's put into the system, those cameras turn on 15 minutes prior to the broadcast, and of course they pick up all the coverage, and it definitely is award-winning coverage. And what I mean by that is, the Pixelot camera zeroes in onto the play. There's an algorithm that's in there, so it knows it's a volleyball game, so of course it's more of a tight shot. Football game, soccer game, more of a wide shot. So the Pixelot cameras does a great job really focusing on that coverage. And it picks up all those events. Again, not only those varsity games, but JV and freshmen as well. And so we've gone from 20 to 30 events for your school with human production to 130 games, because all of your games within those venues we're able to put on the NFHS network. And of course, you as a school, of the $10.99 subscription, you get 100% of those advertising costs. All the advertising that you bring in, you receive 100% of that. That's whether banner ads, reads on there, that's all yours to keep. And then also a percentage of the subscription. Again, $10.99 for a 30-day subscription, not only to watch your games at your school, but to watch all games nationwide. And this year, we'll have 225,000 games on the NFHS network. So as a subscriber, not only do you watch, again, all the Washington events, but you can watch every other state as well, plus all the archive. And so we have over 500,000 events that are sitting in our archive from 7.5 years ago, your state championships from 7 years ago. All those are all part of your subscription. So think of Netflix On the 31st day, we're going to subscribe, or we're going to bill, in a sense, that the subscriber another $10.99. But again, unlimited coverage, not only just for that game that they might be interested for that minute, but they can watch as much as they want. And so, again, I'm going to turn it over to Sean. Sean's our rock star, been with the NFHS network from day one, helped create what we built. And Sean's going to be your go-to contact, and he'll have his information on the last slide for you as well. So Sean, go ahead and take it from here.
Right on. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mark. See you. Good to see all the faces here. But thank you guys for inviting us on. And I know I've talked to many of you over the last several weeks and last several months. So I appreciate you guys giving us an opportunity to reconnect with you, provide you with an update as to what's going on with Pixel-Lock. I think that's important at this stage. We've had many schools in Washington State sign up for our services. And so before I go into some of the Pixel-Lock updates and parameters, really, I want to kind of kick this off and say, guys, for those of you that have signed up recently, I'm talking the last several weeks, the last couple months, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for your onboarding process. I realize that many of you have submitted support tickets to our support staff, and you're probably in the process of being assisted right now by our support team. And I know sometimes these processes can take a little bit of time in terms of getting back to you, updating your password login, getting you guys confirmed on your shipment order for your Pixel-Lock units. There's a lot of different steps that go into our onboarding process, from the very first moment that you chat with me to a Zoom call to that final step of getting your guys' schedules all synced up and getting your events ready to rock and roll. So we do appreciate your patience. If you are currently working with our support team or working with me to troubleshoot any of your issues of your concerns, please continue to do so. Continue to email me, continue to shoot me a text message, a phone call. I will do my best to assist you guys in getting you the proper setup so that you're ready to roll, because I know Washington State is underway in terms of your events, and that is a good thing here on the West Coast. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen here just for a moment. And on my end, if I could just get a friendly thumbs up from somebody in the group that makes sure you can see my background. Okay, perfect. So many of you have seen this particular presentation deck. I'm only going to touch on a couple slides here because I want to make sure we go over some of the more commonly asked questions that are related to Pixel-Lock, specifically your equipment and what arrives to your campus in terms of this automated broadcast technology. So first off, when we're talking about the Pixel-Lock camera head, this guy right here that I'm hovering my mouse cursor over, okay, it needs to be mounted in certain locations at your athletic sites with the Pixel-Lock free-for-all offer that we currently have out nationwide. We're looking at two sites, okay? We're looking at your main gymnasium at your campus, and then we're all looking at your stadium, your field, your complex, your outdoor site. Let's talk about your outdoor site real quick. So for your outdoor site, that Pixel-Lock camera head needs to be mounted outside of your press box, as close to the 50-yard line as possible. Notice that I said press box. You have to. I know some schools get really excited about this. They want to just get it out there at their soccer field where their events are at. But if you don't currently have a press box or some type of weatherproof enclosure at the 50-yard line with some type of pole setup, we're going to hold off on getting you a Pixel-Lock unit at this time. And the reason being is that camera head needs to be mounted to a secured structure near the 50-yard line. And the computer tower that ships with the camera head needs to be inside of a weatherproof enclosure. That way it's safe from the elements, and that it's protected and it can run normally. But that Pixel-Lock camera head will be as close to the 50-yard line as possible for your field setup. For your gym setup, it's going to be mounted at center court. And what we're looking at here is a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of height and distance back. I usually say at least 15 feet off the ground, at least 10 to 15 feet back from the closest out of bounds marker. That's the minimum specs. You can certainly mount it higher and further back than that, but those are just the minimum specs that we recommend. Now, this camera head, when you're talking to your IT department, when you're talking to your maintenance folks, let them know that this camera head is what's called PoE. It is powered over Ethernet connection. It does not come with an electrical cable. It is being powered 100% by the second piece of equipment, and that is the Pixel-Lock computer tower. It is by far the most important piece of equipment that will ship with your order. Each site, your gym, your field, will have its own set of equipment. So that computer tower is strong outlet connection, and it will require a hardline internet port connection, so a wall internet outlet port connection. What if you don't have an internet wall outlet port inside your press box, as an example, for your stadium setup? That's okay. We can basically include in your order what's called a point-to-point system. Your IT department might refer to it as a wireless bridge, but we can include this antenna-based system in your order that will basically allow for a temporary internet solution at your press box. It's one antenna sending a signal from A to B at your press box that will act as a hardline internet connection. And we will only include this if you do not have hardline internet set up at your press box. If you do have hardline at your press box, you're good to go. The last piece of equipment that we include is that scoreboard connection piece. This is how we're able to pump the score, the clock, all that pertinent information that your fans need during your broadcasts on screen. For your gym broadcasts, we're going to include an OCR camera. The OCR stands for optical character recognition. You will only receive one OCR camera in your order. It's designed for gymnasiums. It's not meant for outdoor venues. So this camera will be pointed and aimed at the main scoreboard in your venue. It will digitally read the output from your scoreboard. It will have a single connection cable running out of the back of the camera and plugging into the computer tower. For your stadium site, we will ship you an adapter that will plug into the back of your scoreboard controller. So not the physical scoreboard at your stadium, but the controller. That's what we're focusing on, that scoreboard controller inside your press box. We're going to ship the appropriate adapter that will connect to that, and then the outgoing in will funnel back to the Pixelot computer tower. So those are the three main pieces of equipment that will be included in your order. Again, each site will receive its own set of equipment for your Pixelot order. Now, the current campaign that we have out nationwide is still running strong, 2 Pixelot units at no cost, with a $2,500 installation fee with your setup. Talk to me about installation when you guys sign up. We have some options that are out there in terms of getting these set up for you guys. And just know that we are well aware that Washington State is underway with athletics. So we're trying to bump you guys to the front of the line for any installs that are currently taking place. If you sign up now, if you sign up later this week, we're going to do our best to get you guys your units shipped out here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully in the next couple of days, if we can speed things up and get your site information down and all that pertinent information. If you're ready to rock and roll, if you're ready to move forward, my contact information is listed right there in front of you on your screen. Please send me an email in the subject line. Please put your name. Please put the name of your school. And then please send Pixelot agreement. I know that seems kind of silly, but it will help me out in terms of processing contracts back to your school and getting you going. In the body of the email, please tell me how many Pixelot units you would like, 1 Pixelot unit or 2. And then also let me know if you need a point-to-point system for your outdoor site. That will help me out tremendously when I'm putting together your order. No cost for the Pixelot units. We can certainly discuss the installation options that are available at the time when we're talking with you. All right, that's about my 10 minutes. I know we wanted to keep it nice and short here. So Mick, we'll kick it back over to you guys. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to chat this morning.
Thanks for the quick overview. And a quick question. So on the scheduling, ADs control that. They can choose whether to make it public or private. So if they want to record a practice, they can record a practice that's not open to the public, and they can be used for other events such as assemblies or anything else that goes on in those spaces. Is that still correct?
That's correct, 100%. Yeah, so your athletic directors can control the events that have been scheduled. And remember, we can get your events 2 ways. We can sync it up through like your Arbiter connection, through your Arbiter account, as an example, or you can send us your master file and we can pre-program all of your schedules for you. The practices, you can set those up in our console system and label those as a private event or a non-streamed event, if you will. So when they log into console, they can schedule the practices, and those will not be streamed. They will be recorded on the back end for their viewing.
And a question just came up in the chat about coaches being able to download game film. Can you talk about the partnerships you have there, please?
Yeah, so in terms of the download functionality, all of the video files are MP4 video format once they're downloaded. So from there, your coaches can really take those video files and use them as they'd like. If they want to put them on a thumb drive and share them with their student athletes, they can do that. They can certainly take that video file, download it, and upload it into their Huddle account if they're utilizing Huddle for their coaching analytics tool. And they can certainly do that with the VidSwap partnership that we have through Pixelot as well. So they can always access the footage through console on the back end when they're able to download that video file, and then they can basically plug in anything they like at that point.
And last question for me is, there's no annual cost with this, correct?
That is correct. There's no annual cost. There's no reoccurring fee with the Pixelot system. Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate your time this morning, and want to keep this thing moving on a clip. So without further delay, want to give it over to Russ Waterman, who's going to be talking to us today about a lot of the COVID procedures he's developed at Eastmont and with the North Central Washington region, in addition to some of the documents that he's created for contests to be held at Eastmont High School. So Russ, take it away for us, please, sir.
Well, thanks, Cole. It's kind of just, it's a great feeling. I mean, even knowing there's snow on the ground, you know, our region went to phase 2. I know some of you guys have been there a little bit longer, and Cole's right. It brings some normalcy back to everything. For us, it's been 450 plus days since any of our fall sports have competed, you know, represented Eastmont. When you think about that, that's a huge number. And I think the smiles on those faces as we started football yesterday and we were able to get out there and do stuff, it's been awesome. So, you know, we've all been sitting around for those 400 plus days going, what are we going to do? How are we going to do there? And I know all of you formulated your own COVID plans and everything else. And hopefully today is just kind of some questions to make you think and double think about things, and definitely not here to preach to you or the choir of all the challenges that are going on. So I'll do a little PowerPoint presentation here, and hopefully this will go well, and we'll see how it goes. So just give me a thumbs up, Cole. Is that showing up? So started with this one. This phrase is always something I talk to our coaches about. You know, it's you know, I've got a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. A lot of what we're doing is new. This you know, we get into those rhythms and routines of everything we do for events and practices and trainings, and that's kind of up on its side of how we do things, and we got to implement a lot of COVID stuff. So, you know, it's just kind of crazy when you look at things, and here's the culprit, right? Coronavirus, king virus, you know, and that's who's perceived to be in control and dictating a lot of things. But I have a different view of that, and I think the truth and reality is we control our own destinies. You know, what we do and what we prepare is going to help us succeed in what we do. We often talk about, if you want to get something done, if you want a process, a procedure, an event done, give it to the athletic director. They're going to make a way and make sure it's done correctly and to a high level of efficiency and success. And I truly believe that. And when you look around the state, all of you are on that slate of, you know, you get it done. We're result oriented and we get things done. So what is it we can control? You know, there's a lot of feeling of helplessness, and when, you know, whether we can go forward or back is not left up to us, it's left up to science and metrics, but we can still control a lot of things. And what I thought I'd do is just jot down a few ideas, share a couple things with these things. You know, we get to control the regional agreements, our district level support, working with risk management, improve our policies and procedures, our school and program compliance with not only DOH and the governor's office, but WIAA. Our event management is under our control, the safety of our workers and our athletes, our coaches and players understanding and their compliance with how we can do things, and then our officials. And then I'll talk about a couple other different things about data tracking and parents also at the end. So looking at regional agreements, you know, all of us were broken into those regions, and we all started to work as colleagues for everything that we had to do. And it was working outside of our leagues. Regionally, we all knew each other. We may have dealt with each other in different manners, but we really had to come together in band in a short amount of time to put together those plans for our athletes and our coaches to move forward once we got the green light into phase 2 and when the seasons were going to start. So make sure we're playing by the same rules. So I'll share this document. This is something that we created as a North Central region. Cole, is that up there? Nope. Hold on. Let me see if I can get that up there. This one. We good now? Perfect. So we kind of came together as a North Central region, and we started to think about what are the things that we're going to always have as SOPs, because we have to be more alike than we are apart. Whether it's Eastmont going down the road to play Cashmere, or it's Cascade going up to play Chelan, or Wenatchee going and playing Ephrata, we wanted to be on the same page with everything that we were doing. So we came up with these guidelines that talked about, you know, working with our spectators and venue capacity, as well as just some of the non-negotiables that we would do in regard to our events. And, you know, talking about sending rosters before the game, so we have contact tracing, screening our athletes before they get on the bus, and then the AD shooting that off to the school that we're going to, saying, hey, everybody's been tested and attested to and screened, and we're good to go. So those are some of the things we talk about, playing by the same rules. And then we went a little bit further again, and we looked at cross-country rule considerations in an event. And so it's a living document. We've amended a lot of things. We've added the new language with masking in here, but we decided we would do all of this for football, how we were going to set tier 1 and tier 2 based on classification. What is it you would bring to a visiting site? What's your limit? What's your cap? How many coaches? How many support staff? Everything to work under that 200-person cap that we have from the state. So that's one of the documents that we have. I actually dropped this in with the extension meeting last week with Jeff Lowell. So it's in that Wasa toolbox if you want to go find it. You know, one of the things that we've been talking about here is mask waivers. That's been a point of contention in our region. What are we going to do? Are we going to allow it? Don't allow it? What does your risk management say? That becomes your driving force. If you ever listen to any of the staff, the WIAA staff talk, they always will say, check with your superintendent, check with your risk management. It's sound advice, it's sage advice. Make sure you do those things. And what we found, for at least for Eastmont, who uses Washington State Risk Management Pool, they were not going to allow the mask waivers, and that's up to them, and they provide our insurance, and that becomes an easy decision for us. Great thing that, you know, Sean was on the message here today, because streaming, what are we doing for everybody, since we're not allowing it? Is your region allowing visitors come to events? Are they not allowing it? For our region, we're not allowing visitors to come to our event, just home crowds. So how do you provide that service for other people? And so what do we do with streaming? I would give a shout out to Scott Payne up in Chelan. He's been doing a lot of work in our region, just with behind the scenes with Google Docs and surveys. And what he came up with was this NCR survey results for streaming. So I can get that up here. And so what he created was just a little survey for all of us to go in. Each AD has access to this, so we can share the information about streaming with our visiting teams. So I know if Chelan's coming down here on the 27th, and we're going to open up our volleyball season with the Chelan, we're going to play that match, and then they're staying here, and Wenatchee's coming over across the river, and they'll play Chelan. We'll broadcast that event for both of those schools that are having our site as the place that they're doing that. And then in the nightcap, when Eastmont plays Wenatchee, we'll broadcast that. So we'll make that all available on the NFHS network. But again, this document, a little survey, add a touch for your coaches and you know, the visiting schools to know what's going to happen with the streaming. Who can attend your events? Like I said, we're not allowing visitors to come in. We're going to keep it to the home crowd. This document also is one that I threw in with Jeff's meeting the other day. And so this was just something that I created, a little spreadsheet to talk about how do I really plan out that 200 capacity? What do I really have? And then when I'm working with online ticketing, I know exactly what my venue is, how many tickets I can offer, how many tickets per athlete, and what do we have in regard to social distancing. So really going through our gym and using what we're going to do. For us in volleyball, it will only be one side of bleachers, and then going through and measuring out exactly how many seats I can mark out 6 feet apart and having that capacity. So again, it works smarter, not harder in regard to a lot of things, and it really helps you with the math. And what we found out, like for varsity football, we have no room for any spectators. That's not going to go over real well with the parent meeting tonight, but it is what it is, because we only have that limit of 200. And by adding our team doc last night, we actually went from 199 to 200. So those are some of the things you're going to have to tackle, just like every other AD when we talk about who you're going to allow in, how are you going to allow in. And I know a lot of ADs and regions are saying, we're just not going to have spectators at all. That's a good solution for that problem. And then lastly, on this regional agreement, are we all working for student athletes? It's been a really good experience in our region, a lot of collaboration. When we talk about having to go from a 1B all the way to a 4A working in our region, we had to collaborate, and kind of our operating rule was what's best for student athletes. Put our egos aside, our classifications aside, and let's make sure we make it work for kids. Have them get into this great opportunity, and we're working for kids, not working for ourselves. District level support, like I said before, it's about getting your superintendent on board. They're ultimately, they've got to be safe with everything that you do. So contact them regularly. Hey, what do you think about this? Are you okay with this? I know with us, for spectators, we went kind of back and forth with us, and we decided the first week we weren't going to have spectators at all, because we wanted to ease in and make sure our game management was dialed in, that we were taking care of our athletes, coaches, officials, and workers first, without adding the extra of a fan. If we can get that dialed in that first week, we'll add fans. That was a conversation that I had for 2 weeks with our superintendent, what he felt comfortable with, what other regions were doing, what other schools in our region were doing. And that's kind of where we go. That's that, get him on board, get her on board, so you can get those things done. Last thing is that I've always operated on is make sure it's defensible. If there's anything that goes wrong, can we defend it? Did we stand on the best ground when we made our decisions? Number one, be aligned with your district COVID-19 protocols. Find out who your COVID guru is. For me, we didn't have athletics for 450 days. Guess who got to do the COVID for the district? That'd be me. Duties as assigned. AD stands for another duty. It doesn't stand for athletic director. It's another duty. We get that all the time, and we answer the call. So align that with your COVID-19 protocols for your district. Have a return to play plan. Just like concussion or injury, have a return to play plan. That's a big discussion in the region. Bring your health district on board. Are you actually going to do a return to play, or are you just going to have a medical clearance from a doctor, or are you not going to do anything? Talk to your superintendent, talk to risk management, talk to your local health district. When I started doing all that and talking to those people, I found there wasn't a lot of support for a return to play protocol, because it wasn't being directed to do so. And it was kind of from their standpoint, why are we adding another layer that we really aren't mandated to do? And so we settled and landed on, if we can get the doctor approval, just like any other injury, if a kid goes COVID positive, their primary healthcare provider can authorize return to play. Yes. Cole can return to play in 2 weeks after we know that he's doing better, or whatever it is. Mick can be right back the next day. So work through that with those. The bullet there, no one's above the collective of the WIAA. That's kind of been the thought process of how do we work statewide. This is a statewide thing, and Mick and the staff have worked too doggone hard for us, battling with the Department of Health and battling with the governor's office to get us to this point. We owe it to them to make sure that we are doing an excellent job meeting the needs and the demands to open up. Have a plan and update it. Have it written down. Have your superintendent on board with it. Make sure your coaches have it in their hands, and make sure you updated it. When all this started, we started with a reopening plan 1.0. We are now at Eastmont on 9.0. We update it regularly. New guidance comes out, we move it on, we update it, we document that. Risk management approval. Remember, I'll just go with that third bullet. They're working for us, right? We pay them a fee. It's a pretty good fee. Get them involved. They're the ones that are going to give you the guidance. Yes, I think that's a good thing to do. No, that's not a good thing to do. They'll never tell you you can't do it, because they're just going to tell you you're going to get covered or you're not going to get covered. So make sure you're talking to your risk management agent, getting guidance from them, especially on those kind of things that as you're walking the path, the ground becomes a little more squishy. Make sure you're getting on the path, the right path that's going to keep you out of harm's way with liability or litigation. School program and compliance. I talk to this all the time with coaches that want to maybe not understand, or maybe they don't agree with some of the things that are coming down. I said, hey, we don't ask officials not to enforce a certain rule in a game. We go, hey, we're not going to worry about holding today in the football game, or hey, we're going to let it be a little more aggressive in the soccer game. Don't call it that way. We wouldn't do that. And not alone along with that, but we wouldn't allow our coaches or players not follow the rules on purpose just because they don't agree with them. We got to make sure we put ourselves, again, it comes back to that collective. It comes back to working for student athletes. Put our personal beliefs, our political beliefs off to the side. Here's the rules that we got to follow. Here's the rules that we got to do. Hey, we know where we got to go. That's easy. That's an easy decision. I think in 2021, for all of us, we will be our greatest success story as athletic directors, schools, that we were able to do this. We were given a challenge and we were able to pull this off for our athletes. 75, 80, 90% of the other states in the union were playing at some point or other. It's our turn to shine and make sure we can do this. Or we could be the cause of our failure because we don't want to maybe abide by some of the rules or we think this is kind of hokey. We got to make sure that we're on the same page. So I threw up here the new CDC mitigation strategies for reopening. These were just released last week. And I think if your district's following these, and I guarantee you most of your district COVID person already has put these in place. Some of us are in A/B hybrid models. Some of us are still remote learning. But these are the standards that we have to have in regard to COVID-19. We got to have correct and consistent use of masks. This is our number one issue at Eastmont. Is masking and getting our athletes, to mask and stay masked as much as possible during their events. Social distancing. There's that human need to bond, and if you go out to your practice and you watch, you see it happen. The kid's done with the drill, they go over. It is just like they just want to converge with each other, just like they do in real life. And how do you handle that? So hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, cleaning, disinfection, and contact tracing and collaboration. Those are all points that you can do. So masking, it's not an issue, right? We've told them, we got them, we provided them masks. We're all following it, right? Take a look at your social media accounts. Sometimes there's pictures being posted. And then, the last bullet is the context of that picture. I'll share a story, first day of football at Eastmont, and I've got two vehicles parked off campus with long telephoto lenses. And I'm going, holy cow, this is right out of a spy movie. Well, one of them was our local paper and he didn't want to get out in the cold. So he was shooting from distance. The other one was a parent. He goes, I'm just making sure that everything's up and up. My son's out here. I said, well, trust me, it is. And if you see anything different, contact me. But we need to be able to make sure that masking is there and there's those different options. Common sense though has to rule the day. I think it was a great push by Mick and the staff in regard to the cross country rule to allow those kids to race without masks. I don't think sometimes that maybe people that are policymakers really understand what that impact is. So health screening of the athletes, have you done that? We've all done our signups and we got medical clearances. Does your AT know if there's a respiratory problem? Does your coach know that an athlete has a respiratory problem? Have they got a mitigation plan to keep an eye on that kid who's doing an activity with a mask on that's going to inhibit that breathing somewhat? Mask breaks. Do you have a designated area in your practices where a kid just has to take the mask down? Social distance and that over there, is it designated? So if somebody were to walk up and take a look, they would go, oh, that kid's just taking a mask break. That seems to be that kind of an area. What kind of masks are you approving? Are you saying that it's got to be double layer cloth, triple layer cloth? Are you asking for double mask? Are you doing gaiters? Does your gaiter have to be folded over? What about coaches that want to use face shields with a face covering? Are you allowing that? Has that been approved? Are you doing drapes on your face shields? What about PPE for your trainers? They have to go out and tend to an injured athlete, or you're providing them with gloves, face shields, masks, those kind of things to keep them safe. So those are some things in your mind you start to think about. Do I have all those things in place? What about the new football helmet mask that's out? That's the rage that we see going on. We actually got a sample from our BSN rep, Ed Nags. We put it on one of our helmets and we took it over to Malcolm Butler, who is our doctor at our health district, Chelan Douglas County. And, he put the helmet on. I didn't know he was going to do that, but he put the helmet on. He worked around and I said, well, the mask is going to be yours now. And he goes, no, just wash it. You'll be fine. I'm trying to look at him. I don't know if I want that mask back. But, he approved that for us as another policy, but with stipulations that if we use that mask, that student athlete still needed to be masked up differently in the locker room, needed to be masked up for all pre and post events, sideline masked up, all those different things that you got to think, okay, now how do I do that? We provide the mask for the face mask, and now he's got to have a mask on the sideline. How do we enforce that? Number one for us is probably maybe in our schools is combating that hometown message or that home front message, I guess, of what's being said at home by the parents about these rules, about masking and everything else. For us, it's not an option. Again, I go back to that point, we got to set aside our personal beliefs, political beliefs, or whatever our biases might be to this and know that this is the rule. We don't always have to agree with the rule, but we always have to follow the rule. And so that's kind of that footing that you got to be clear with your parents on. Social distancing, 6 feet is 6 feet. It is what it is. Hopefully, I think, there's some rumors in the CDC might go to maybe 2 feet, 1 meter or whatever that might be, 3 feet. Hopefully that is. Do you have a 3-strike rule? Maybe your athletes at practice and you've had to warn that athlete or the coach had to warn that athlete 2-3 times. Do you remove the athlete now? Is there a level of removal or a penalty for not social distancing or not masking? I was talking to my football coach last night, Mike Dawn, and I go, how did the first day of practice go? He goes, man, it sounded like a broken record. I 6 feet, boys, 6 feet, boys, 6 feet, boys. I said, well, how'd you handle it? He goes, finally, I just told them to do the helicopter drill. I go, what's a helicopter drill? I had them hold their hands out and spin around. If they touch somebody, they owed 10 push-ups. I go, dude, creative. I love it. So push-ups in the snow is probably not real pleasurable, but they're going to get it with time. You guys are going to have to look at locker room use. Are you going to use those locker rooms? We did create something here at Eastmont that dealt with just a small temporary locker room use and kind of guidelines. So what we looked at was what was our procedure. We know that our athletes that are at school need time to change. So if the A cohort is at school, we provide them with a limited amount of time to go in and use the locker room to just change and then get out. We have a coach that is a middle level coach that is also a PE teacher with us, and she's monitoring that locker room for us as part of a way to earn hours back toward her full coaching stipend. So we've been creative in how do we man that and provide supervision in that locker room during that time. On the men's side, it's just one of our male coaches that's in there. So again, how do you address that? Social distancing, marked floors, those kind of things that could be there. And again, for each one. So we work in pods of 10 athletes. We give them about 3 minutes to get changed, get in, get out. For football, we're blessed that we have a varsity locker room on one side that's connected to our PE locker room. So the kids will go in their pod of 10. Football player will change into a soft gear and he'll walk across and we'll have just his helmet and his shoulder pads in the varsity locker room lockers. He picks up his stuff. He goes and finishes dressing out on the way to the practice field. And at the end of practice, and we'll talk about a little bit more on cleaning and sanitation, we'll bring his gear in, we'll sanitize the helmet, shoulder pads, and we'll put them away. No soft gear in there. So again, that's just one way that we could maybe mitigate a locker room issue. You're gonna have to deal with games, half times. What are you gonna do? What's your school gonna do? Again, we talked about spectators, workers and events, score table. WIAA has got some good guidelines in there under those COVID guidelines. Take a look in there. Hygiene, hand sanitizers, wash the workout gear daily, washing masks daily. We rent from our local porta potty company 4 units outside for hand sanitizer. And then we purchase some of our own hand sanitizers for inside, plus what we do in the school with all the mounted hand sanitizers around. I don't think there's going to be a problem with anything at Eastmont about being able to sanitize people's hands, but have you done that in those high traffic areas? Have you done that for different areas for your athletes? Last thing is on this one is cleaning and disinfecting. Follow your district's plan for cleaning. Work with your building custodians. When do they know that practice is over so they can come in and sanitize? Are cleaning supplies readily for your staff? So I picked up these units. Again, I think I might have went into the wrong profession. These creative people create these things. This is just a hand cart with a couple things and attachments, making bank on it. I'm not quite that smart to get in there, but this is out of a company back east. I found this out from AD in Ohio. Use this company, and so it comes in. It's got the bucket on the bottom where we got microfiber tiles. You've got the sanitizing wipes right there in a bucket, and then we've got our helmet and shoulder pad sanitizer. We've got our hand gel, and then we've got soap and water in a spray bottle. So we've got all the cleaning components for a coach at every level that they're holding a practice. We have one in the weight room. We have one in the main gym for volleyball. We have one in the auxiliary gym for volleyball. We have one out on the soccer field that they store in their soccer shed. So all that cleaning for their gear every day, the equipment, the implements, the balls can be done readily and without a problem. Screening, this is how we've worked with the health district on contact tracing. All of you have some sort of screening in place. You're either using Family ID, final forms, you're using Skyward, paper and pencil for some of us. Are you notifying the proper people? What do you do if somebody fails a screening? What if they attest to one of the symptoms and you have to send them home for practice? Do you have a protocol in place to notify the parent, notify the nurse, notify the building administrator that this is happening? Do you place them on an isolation routine now that they have to come back with a negative COVID test or wait 10 days so they can come back? If it comes back to a positive COVID, have you put in the 10 days of isolation? What about those A/B learning and attesting for the school? All of our athletes will come out and they'll reattest every day, whether they were in their cohort in school or whether they were on remote learning and they're coming back. Every athlete will attest every day. We'll screen every athlete. We'll take a temperature of every athlete. What do you do about your non-educational staff? Educational staff have to attest every day to come to work. What do you do with the coaches that aren't there? So we created a survey for our coaches that they have to take every day that talks about them coming in. So it's just a Google Doc, and basically they put in their first name, last name, their email account, where are they coaching at, the sport you're coaching. I can't go next because I haven't done any of the required fields. So the next page is all the attestations. Do you have a fever? Do you have a cough? Do you have a recent taste of smell, loss of taste of smell? All those things. And then that gets tracked with a timestamp for us for our contact tracing. And if we ever got audited by L&I, that we're making sure that we have a testing done all the time. Online ticketing for you does that for your spectators. If you're having them, they have to sign up. They have to give all those things. Again, signage at your field, talking about attestation, talking about following the COVID rules. All the things you talked about with event management, I'm sure you've worked through your staff and all your workers. It's a different thing. But we need to make sure that, again, we're protecting them, giving them the PPE. Have you talked to those workers? Is that longtime ticket booth worker that's been doing this for 30 years for you at risk and need increased PPE to have face-to-face contact with people, whether you're handling cash or you're digitally remote with your tickets and they're just screening or checking to make sure that digital tickets rip? Do they need enhanced PPE, and have you provided that for them? Do your screening, do your social distance with them, have the debate over online tickets versus box office cash handling. All those mitigation strategies are going to work with you. If everybody, I'm sure, that's gone into anything to look at online ticketing has had extensive conversations with your business and finance directors. They're a little tweaked out about it, but you can work through this with them as long as we're meeting the auditor's requirements of deposits. Coach player compliance, make sure that in your clearance packets, again, we've all got that COVID waiver form that informs the parents. It's that assumption of risk that we have for any sport, whether it be volleyball, wrestling, football, there's a chance of injury, hey, you're coming out and there's a pandemic going on. There's a risk that there could be exposure to COVID, and the parents and the athlete need to sign off that they understand that risk. Make sure that you have those coaching staff trainings and meetings revolving around COVID, as well as your other WIAA standards, your first aid requirements, and all that good stuff, CPR. We use the NFHS COVID course for coaches and admin, and just have them download that certificate just like they would with their coaches school stuff, online clinics with the WIAA. So make sure that they have an understanding of it. Do the practice walkthroughs by admin, give them a grade. Our superintendent likes to do that. He likes to come through the buildings, and then he'll talk with our building administrator. He goes, hey, you know what, Jeff Jameson, today at West Valley, I walked through your building and I'm giving you a B-. I saw some kids with their masks down. I saw teachers not socially distant. Do that with your coaches. I think it's an effective way, rather than say, you're not doing this, just say, hey, you got a B- effort today. Let's try to improve. I don't think any of our coaches are out there purposely trying to not follow the rules, but we're trying to herd cats here a little bit with kids and masks and everything else. Just take time about officials. Sometimes officials are the ones that are a little bit an afterthought. We got to make sure that we're talking about them, talk to them early. When they arrive, communicate, where do you want them to arrive? Where do you want to meet them? How do you do the screening for them, their temperature, if you're going to do that? Where are you going to house them? How do you socially distance them there? Are they going to have a locker room? Or are you going to make a classroom? Are you going to make a gym for them? What are the areas that they're going to be in, and what are you going to do? Do they arrive dressed, or not dressed? Or those are questions you have to do. Showers, all that stuff. Send your regional SOPs to your assigners so they know if you've made some rule modifications, that they're aware of that. They can review that with their officials. Parents, communicate early. I think tonight's meeting is going to be a lot about with my parent group about the quarantine period for exposure. I'm going to explain that in depth. What's going to happen if Johnny decides to go over and not follow social distancing rules and masking rules in his private life, and he's exposed to COVID? Well, Johnny's going to be done how many days? Well, it could be 14. Maybe your district's adopted the CDC reduction model, which is after day 5, they can test, and on a negative test result, they can come back in 8, or they can just sit the full 10. If there's no symptoms, they can come back in day 11. Once you explain that to them, the other one that's the catch is if you've got a multiple athlete family, and so little Jimmy goes and becomes exposed by somebody with his COVID positive, comes home, and now his brother Johnny doesn't go 10 or 14, we got to tack on the 10-day isolation period, so he could be out anywhere from 20 to 24 days. That one hits home with parents. We've gone through a couple of those cases already about 2 weeks ago with a couple of athletes that were at a slumber party, and one of them was positive, and they went back to a family. Then they were kind of shocked that their daughter had to do a 24-day kind of isolation period. So make sure you communicate that, and then explain your COVID-19 plan. Data collection, do what you need to do. I think it was a good idea that we did here, and I'll share this in District 6. We created this document, and I think all of our ADs still need to get in and finish this out, but just tracking the data that we can share. If there was ever a time when somebody was questioning the validity of starting athletics, we can come back with hard data and say, hey, here's the cases that we have. And we're doing it by not only summer data, but by fall sport when we finish the fall sport and spring sport. So we're keeping track of how many COVID positive cases come in and where's that transmission. Is it on campus in the teams, or is it out of campus in the community? And I think what we find is majority, if not all, is away from school. And we just have to have an issue when they bring it back in. So big drink of water out of a fire hose in regard to COVID-19 stuff, but I agree with Chuck Norris. You got this, we got this. If you have any questions, give me a holler via email, give me a call.
Russ, that's awesome. I can tell you the CWAC has used a number of your documents already, so can't thank you enough for sharing everything that you're working on up there. And you might pour back through the chat. There's a couple questions in terms of some of the equipment that was on there as well. So if you could throw any kind of details like that in there, that would be outstanding as well. So thanks again, Russ, and WI staff. Let's hear about the executive board meeting yesterday.
All right, let's get this on the road. Here we go. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are well. It's been really great to follow social media and see so many schools out there competing. And it's really also great to see so many of you here today. I know it's changing the game a little bit to stay in this connection while you guys are busy getting sports up and running. So we did have a board meeting last night, and we will get through some information from that board meeting. Feel free to jump in here, staff, when you're ready to go. So Cindy, go ahead.
So there have been some rule waivers that have been approved. Those are posted on that COVID page on the WI website, but we thought it was important just to do a quick summary of those today. In order for you all to meet the COVID guidelines, for open gym, you can have a designated time each week for a given sport. So you could have basketball on Mondays, baseball on Tuesdays, whatever your schedule would be, as long as all the sports that you offer at your school have a designated time somewhere during that week. The second one is that, again, to meet the guidelines, the Jamboree for this year can consist of only 2 teams rather than the required 3 that it has been in the past. It's important to keep in mind that your school is still limited to whatever it says in the Jamboree for that sport. Now, I will tell you, I got a question yesterday and I looked at volleyball. So a volleyball Jamboree is limited to 6 sets. That's based on one school playing 2 other schools. Well, if you only play one school, A full match is only 5 sets. So that's all you get to do in a jamboree. They don't get to play 6. Just because it's a jamboree, that would be more than a full contest. The non-school participation is, we've talked about this briefly. This is an amendment that's up for vote this spring. But that is also granted as a waiver for this year that will allow coaches to make exceptions to students participating in non-school sports no more than once per week. And then in high school volleyball, in order to give the kids more chance to play, you can have a match that is a guaranteed 5 out of 5. You need to make sure that that decision is made at least a week prior to the match, that your signer's been notified to make sure that you have officials to cover that. And then there is an additional fee for that because it's a 5-set guarantee.
We're going to also talk about some board action from yesterday or first readings with the board. So Andy?
Yeah, as you know, there's been a number of requests and conversation regarding Summer 2.0. The board had a very in-depth conversation about that last night, and they have approved on first reading, pending some guidelines that the staff will develop and get out to the executive board for review. So on first reading, Summer 2.0 has been continued through the end of the school year. So we will develop those guidelines as soon as we can. We'll get those out to the executive board. They will review them, and then if they want to approve those guidelines and parameters, they will do so by vote, and then we will send out to the membership as soon as we have that. So on first reading, Summer 2.0 has been extended, and we will get that out as soon as we can. The other discussion they had was allowing for coaches to coach seniors. That has also been approved on first reading. We will develop guidelines for that as well and get that to the executive board. So we are going to move on that as soon as we can and get that to the executive board for their review, and we'll get it sent out to the membership as soon as any final decisions have been made.
Justin, go ahead.
Yep. The Metro League had requested a waiver for concurrent limitations on students participating in multi-sports at the same time due to their 2-season schedule and sports being stacked upon one another. Based on SMAC recommendations and being split, the board took action to approve this. And so they will now be allowed to allow for multi-sport participation for this year. And there are some restrictions in place defining what contact sports are, only allowing one contact sport to be played at a time. And so you wouldn't be able to, if for some reason soccer and football were going to be played at the same time, that would not be allowed by these parameters. So there are specific parameters in place. So that is now available, as we know that there are a couple other leagues that have began to look at stacking sports, so that would now become available statewide.
Thanks, Justin. Cindy, some editorial changes in the handbook.
Several of you have reached out to our staff in the last couple of weeks to find out if virtual practices can count towards meeting the minimum practice requirements. And as Russ told you earlier, we sent you back to your risk manager on that. And in most cases, we are aware that you have been notified that it is not recommended by a risk manager. I believe that all of us have assumed that practices are in person. So the board took first reading last night on a proposed editorial change that would add that practice would be in person. So again, these other first readings that we've gone through, it's very important that you relay your thoughts to your executive board members to whether or not you believe that is appropriate or is something that you could recommend or not. The other one is that WIAA Handbook Rule 1726-4 allowed a school to authorize exceptions to both the uniforms and to headwear based on religious or medical issues. The National Federation Volleyball Rules Committee just eliminated the statement that state associations were required to approve that. So you no longer have to have a letter saying that your volleyball player is allowed to wear religious headwear. It's just will be allowed. The uniform exceptions, however, still will need a letter that you will have to provide to the officials prior to the start of the contest. We had also talked about this one with the amendment regarding the potential for 8th graders from non-member feeder middle schools to play at 1B and 2B high schools. But there was no definition of a member middle school in that section. It is in the out of season rule, but rather than refer back to that rule, we've added this definition will now be added in that section in the handbook.
Great, thanks, Cindy. A couple of eligibility things. We did have the board review some language about the sub-varsity status for 1 calendar year. And so the language is here. They approved in theory a month or two ago this concept, but now we've approved this language. So as you know, if you do determine a student to be sub-varsity status for 1 calendar year, and that calendar year will have the same sport happen twice, once in this academic year, once in the next academic year, they will only have to serve that sub-varsity status for the first time that sport is offered. And so the second year, they would have access to varsity status. So we've talked about this in the past, but we now have the language to go with it. Secondly, just a reminder, it was a long time ago when we did all that eligibility training. So just a reminder, WIAA.com/eligibility is where all the eligibility paperwork is. If you need interpretations on eligibility, please contact Justin, Sam, or I. You can also find a link to contact us on that eligibility page. And a huge shout out to Justin and Sam Brown. The paperwork is provided in 11 languages on that website now. So when you go to WIAA.com/eligibility, you will find all of the paperwork. I think 16 documents or something like that, 20 documents have all been translated into 11 languages. So a huge shout out to Justin and Sam Brown for their efforts on that. Cindy, you want to talk a bit about the amendment process proposal for next year?
Yeah, one of the things we have presented to both the board and the district directors, and there has been quite a bit of support for that, is moving up the timeline for the due dates for amendments. Right now it's the first Friday in December. We are supporting or recommending that that be changed to November 15th. What that will do is allow us to get those amendments out earlier, and they can actually go through review by the DEI committee, the SMAC committee, the superintendents, the school boards. Your leagues will have a chance to look at it prior to Winter Coalition. As I can tell you, one of the questions that I heard often during Winter Coalition, well, what do the superintendents think about this? Those groups generally do not see that until after the amendments have been finalized at Winter Coalition. That would still be the case, that it will be preliminary discussion, but they can bring, those different groups can bring comments and concerns forward that may impact the final wording in the amendment. So we're still looking at having the amendments finalized during the coalition at the end of January.
Great, thank you. Andy or Justin, you want to touch base on some football related issues?
Yeah, I'll start and Justin can jump in. But the biggest thing, and we've said this a couple of times, and all information has been posted on the COVID football page, but make sure that you are following the recommended reconditioning guidelines through NARA. After this season, make sure that you get those in, because the helmets are going to need to be reconditioned going into the fall season. So keep in mind, if your seasons are bumped out a little bit, the turnaround time for that, there is the potential that We may need to review at the summer guidelines and what football might look like, just depending on if you can get your football helmets and shoulder pads reconditioned in time. And if your helmets have a 2019 sticker on them, they are not to be used for this 2021 season. So make sure that your helmets have the correct dates, and all of that information is posted on the COVID football page. And Justin is going to continue to work with SMAC as we get closer through the summer to see if there's any additional guidelines that they're going to put out on that. Justin, anything else to add?
Nope, you covered it.
Thanks, guys. Mick, some updates on working with DOH and Governor's Office.
Yeah, first I'd like to say, just wow, Russ, what you presented and what your group have done up there is absolutely amazing. And typically I don't like a lot of things recorded because I always come back some way to haunt us. But I am so thankful that's recorded, because part of what we've been telling in now our weekly meetings is that schools should be given more opportunity for athletics and activities, and not less or the same as community sports, because school people do it right? I know there's a lot of people in the community that do it right, but across the board, and what you presented today is unbelievable. And so I'm very thankful that's there, because we can reference that as an example. That's why recently we were able to get the permission for schools to travel for league contests out of state. Again, our leagues are not our traditional leagues. They've been realigned, similar to what also was shared, to take care of all schools and kids in your region. And so the reason for that was they knew kids getting on a school bus or whatever mode of transportation and going back and forth, that it's going to be done right. So thank you very much, Russ, for your leadership on that in your presentation today. I also want to clear up, I appreciate the acknowledgement of the Washington State Risk Management Pool wanting to be more restrictive on the masks. And that is a perfect example. Even though we had communicated with their ombudsman, entities are large, and those attorneys were only looking at paperwork. They did not know that in these Friday calls and the emails going back and forth, that actually the governor's office and Department of Health knew that. So when they put their statement out, they weren't even aware of that. That hadn't articulated through their system yet. And so that's why we always want to make sure we double back with that. So those of you with Clear Risk, I know Clear Risk is doing a similar review and getting ready to come out with their stance on it as well. So make sure you're checking in with Aaron and that team. The other piece is that in our meetings with the DOH, we've really kind of focused on trying to find out if there's any flexibility in the spectators. The number one concern now that masking is still in the definitely top two of concerns we're getting from the general public and parents are being able to watch their kids play. And so what we're explaining to them is the 200, that hard cap is coming from the governor and Department of Health. And for all of us, it's difficult to explain how you can have 1,000 seats empty with no one playing. With parents, we're explaining that who the decision makers are on that, being the Department of Health and the governor's office, at the same time sharing with them that schools all have very unique needs and different resources and the ability to accommodate fans because they want to pit one against the other. And we know that this is starting to bubble up at the superintendent level within some leagues. And so, the more, again, going back to Russ's presentation, the more you can loop in your ultimate decision makers in your schools and school districts, I think will be beneficial to not create issues within your leagues and definitely between ADs. All of you are working so incredibly hard right now to pull this off with shifting sands below your feet. The last thing we want to do is have conflicts within our athletic directors and our office. So that's really what our focus has been. What can we do? I will say they mentioned, you may be aware, CDC came out with a report, basically said, don't do sports, focus on getting kids back into school. That's not the stance that we're seeing from our state leadership right now. What they're sharing with us is they're actually reviewing the difference between indoor sports and outdoor sports, the need to be connected to phasing with those. And they're also looking at how masking is impacted, and more information is coming out on those two specific topics. So we're going to continue to work with them as they're doing their deep dive. They're sending us some very in-depth reports for us to do our homework. We're sending them the stuff we're pulling together. We're hoping to, as we continue into the spring, we get outdoors more, that there's more opportunity. The last thing I would say is just be prepared in case for some reason your region goes back to phase one. They have told us in very clear terms, they are not interested at this point in granting a waiver, even though it's allowable under their paperwork, for an exception to phasing, that the metrics fall where the metrics fall. So that would be my only caution as we're excited and finally everybody's playing or has the opportunity to play. If we end up rolling backwards into phase one in some region, just having a plan for how you can pivot and move forward. So now the 2-week deal doesn't seem quite as bad for us, rather than the weekly one that we're on the other side of it, but we need to be prepared in case it does happen for that 2-week pause. So other than that, that's really the extent of it, unless Justin and Andy Barnes, who are sitting in those meetings with me, have anything to add. Okay, thanks, Cole.
And I would say that's it, Cole, for our presentation. I don't know between Cole and Dave if you guys want to touch base a little bit on kind of what we're thinking about moving forward with this.
Before we do that, I'll let Dave talk about that. But before we do that, I want to introduce Lacey London. She's been working on a CMAA cohort, and she's going to talk a little bit about that as we kind of move forward in certification this year.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Cole, and thank you, Russ and Mick and the WIAA team. Appreciate all the work that you guys have put in. Presentations were great this morning, and for those of you who are on winter break, hope you're enjoying a little bit of time off, sort of, and let's get moving on sports here. So I know that we've had a lot of time off to think about all of our professional development opportunities that we've had. And I know that now we are in a very busy time getting prep for sports, but this has been something that's kind of been weighing on my mind for a while. I received my CAA back in 2012. I've taken every class that I need to do to get my CMAA. I just need to do the project. I need a kick in the pants and I need accountability. So that conversation has come up a few times with a few of my fellow athletic directors around the state. And we thought, why don't we put together a cohort? A group of people who have completed their CAAs and who just need that accountability, the kick in the pants to get their CMAA project done or to get those classes done, and just to kind of help guide them through that process. So what I'm working on is putting together a group that will kick off at our Wasa conference in June. So we're not asking you to start right now. We have enough on our plate right now. But we'll kick off in June and we'll just come together. If you're in person with us at the conference, great. If you are virtual, that's great too. The whole idea is we will have a brainstorming session. We'll talk about project ideas. We'll see where we are along the path. If you are like me and just need to do the project, if you need to get some classes done, we're going to just have an accountability group to be together to start the process. We'll identify topics and timelines. We'll put you together with an accountability partner to help you, that probably is along the same timeline as you, to help you get through that process. So that is our goal, to help get some more CMAAs here in Washington State. I know we have plenty of CAAs. Let's take that next step in our certification. So watch your email. I know we have a lot coming through right now. Watch your email for an email from AMP, and I'll send out some more details of what to look for. So if you are in this boat and you have your CAA and you would like to be on the CMAA path, just shoot me a message once we get that information out to you, and we will start sharing a little more information. If anybody has any questions, you're happy to reach out. I know we're really busy right now getting sports up and running. And I thank you for Jim for recommend saying that you'd be willing to participate. We definitely will be reaching out to some people who have recently had their CMAAs or gone through that process to get some input and some strategies and some ideas. So that's just something to look forward to. Again, not on top of the list at this moment, but that will be coming in June, when we're all taking a deep sigh of relief because we've made it through this year. We've made it through our sports seasons. And just thank you for everybody for all that you have done to get this rolling for us. And appreciate the words of wisdom today, and look forward to getting Metro up and running on Monday. So once we get started, I think I'll feel better. I think I'll sleep a little better at night. So thank you, everybody.
Hey, Lacey, I'd like to give just some stuff right now. The thing I would recommend is, it's not a complicated process. It does take time. That you're already doing something that will be what you can use for your CMAA. Mine was something I had been doing for a couple of years. And then I'll call Mick out a little bit because his is up on the WASA NIAAA website as an example. I'm sure that he was doing a lot of that beforehand, and he put a lot of work into just telling people what it was. The hardest part I found was making sure I had the classes and then writing it up, finding time. So that's why I think your group idea of having support is probably the biggest motivator for people. That is what took me the most time. Once I got it done, the process was fine. It took them a while to review it because they were busy. But I think if you look at things you're already doing, and Russ isn't going to claim that he did all of that stuff, but a lot of the things he just showed are things that's an example of a project that somebody could use. They're probably going to want much more individually than a group effort, which we know all of that kind of stuff is, but you're already doing something that can be used as a project. So I guess my recommendation is don't work hard to find something new unless it's a passion of yours. Look at what you're already currently doing that is making a difference in your school, league, or whatever.
That's excellent advice, Jim. I would echo everything that you just said in pursuit of my own. So thank you, Lacey. Thank you, Jim, and everybody who's excited about this. I think it's definitely well worth it. One of the biggest parts of professional growth for me as an athletic administrator. So Tick, wanted to turn it over to you. Dave, Eric Titus, Jeff Lowell, BJ and myself met a couple weeks ago to discuss the results of the survey that we put out to you guys to see what the direction Wasa Wednesday was going to take, and we got a few ideas in mind with some of that information. So Tick, do you want to take it away and I'll chime in as necessary?
Yeah, hopefully I won't mess this up because I don't have the information in front of me, but for the most part, we've decided, I mean, when you look at our numbers today, 130, we've been having over 200 for the Wasa Wednesdays. Obviously, the networking part is still important, but a lot of people are engaged now in their respective schools. So we're going to stay with our 2-week format through March 17th. And then after that, it's going to be once a month with Wasa Wednesday as we work up to the conference. And a lot of that information is going to be conference related. The conference information is on our website right now for those of you that aren't registered. A number of you registered last year, and we just kind of carried over that information, so you're still good. The hotel information is online on our Wasa website also. March 17th, Cole, we have a special speaker that Cole has locked into. Cole, and the other thing is, before I go back to Cole, I get emails all the time where people are saying, okay, tell us about the Wasa Wednesday schedule. All right, so I'm going to put the dates in for the remainder of Wasa Wednesdays for the rest of the year when I send out this recording tomorrow for everybody. So everybody at least has that information in front of them when the next Wasa Wednesday is going to be. We're not locked into to a speaker every single one of those dates, but we will be here soon. So with that being said, BJ, Cole, or anybody else, would you like to add to that?
I think you hit it right on the head. We'd love to get more speakers from our own association too. I mean, we're still trying to get a lot of the best information as possible, but as I know, obviously I had a soccer and volleyball game yesterday. I was busy and I got a lot to do today to wrap it up. So it's going to get busier as we start entering competitions. It's going to become more difficult for people to get to, and as noted by our numbers today. So we want to make sure it's clear, concise, and specific to the needs of our association. So Dave hit on March 17th, was able to connect with WSU and have Coach Nick Rolovich join us on March 17th. So excited to hear from Coach Rolo and kind of hear his story a little bit. But yeah, beyond that, we're just going to kind of play it by ear and see if we can't get some members of our own association to present just like Russ did today. BJ, anything to add to that?
No, the only other thing that we had talked about is trying to keep these pretty close to an hour if we can. So you know that if you can be here, we'll get in and we'll get out and try not to drag things on much. So
perfect. Okay, I wanted to just open it up for anybody else. Anything to share, anything for the good of the order? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up and let you guys go and have a great week. Outstanding.
I'd just like to thank Russ again for just a tremendous presentation. Great information, and I just think it speaks to how professional we are as an organization and what our networking has done and how important it is to get things done right. And that's just a great message to send to all the decision makers. So Russ, appreciate your diligence and the information you shared today. It's terrific, terrific.
All right, you guys.